It's nice easing back into old routines. Only now, with extra care. Let's do it for ourselves, for our loved ones, for everyone's safety.
Hurry up, let's go. Let's go.
And staying safe starts at home.
Nice.
From how we work and learn, to the little ways we find joy. If you must head out, take extra care. Making a small effort, being mindful, they go a long way to keeping us all safe. The health of all depends on each one of us. So let's work together, using new tools and keeping to our new habits to protect the people we love. At work, let's all be good team players.
Hi, good morning. How are you? Good.
A little distance between us today will be good for us all tomorrow. A little care can protect the one thing that means the world to us. So let's do our part.
The views and opinions expressed by the speaker, host, commentator, or other third party in ARIVA webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass are those of the speaker, host, commentator, or third party and do not necessarily reflect and represent the views and opinions of ARIVA. Furthermore, ARIVA does not warrant, express, or imply the merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose of any product information, service, or process presented by the speaker, host, commentator, or third party, and ARIVA specifically disclaims any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or usefulness of any product information, service, or process presented. Finally, material or information presentation, opinion, process, or service by, on any trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise during ARIVA webinars, e-learning events, and/or virtual masterclass do not constitute or imply ARIVA's endorsement or recommendation of such opinion, process, service, item, or organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ARIVA Academy's free live webinar. Our topic this afternoon is strategic workforce planning for a competitive advantage in a post-COVID world. I am so excited to be with everyone this afternoon. I'm Kate and I'll be your host. And really excited to also be learning with everyone. Now, before I introduce our speaker, let me give a few reminders to make sure that this webinar will run smoothly the whole afternoon. ARIVA is committed to protecting your privacy, hence stricter security of this webinar has been implemented. So for better viewing of your Zoom experience, we encourage you to please update your Zoom application by visiting their website. And for those of you who are using their mobile gadgets to view this webinar, you can go to either the Google Play Store or the Apple Store so you can download and install the Zoom app. Now, I want to know who here is joining an ARIVA Academy webinar for the first time. If it's your first time, can you type hi in the chat box? Also, let us know where you're watching us from. I'm here in Parañaque City. We're having a very beautiful afternoon. It's sunny outside. So we also have a lot of participants who are viewing us from out of town. So we have friends who are from Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Bulacan, Batangas, from Quezon Province, from Basbate, from Camarines Sur, from Catanduanes, from Bataan, from Antique, Bacolod, from Ormoc, from Zambales, Pampanga, Pangasinan, Ilocos Norte, from Nueva Ecija, from Lawag, Baguio, Benguet, from Isabela, from Palawan, wow, Puerto Galera, Puerto Princesa, from Oriental Mindoro, from Iloilo, from Negros Oriental, from Panay, from Leyte, from Bohol, Cebu, from Davao, from Agusan del Norte, from Cagayan de Oro, from Compostela Valley, from Dumaguete, Misamis Oriental. We also have participants from Kidapawan, Cotabato, Coronadal, Maguindanao, Ozamis, and Zamboanga. Aside from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, we also have participants who are viewing us from out of the Philippines. So let us welcome our participants who are watching us from Indonesia. We have friends who are viewing us from Malaysia, from Singapore, from China also, from Nepal, from India, Sri Lanka, from Pakistan. We have from Bangladesh, from Qatar, from UAE, from Canada, from Australia, South Africa, and USA. So, hello Philippines, hello world. Good afternoon, everyone. We're excited to have you all here. So welcome to ARIVA Academy. And for those of you who have been with us in the past, welcome back. We're very happy to have you here again with us. Now, let us do an audio check, okay? I want to make sure that once our speaker is on screen, you will be able to hear the discussion clearly. Please type 111 in the chat box if you can hear me clearly. You can also type 222 if you can hear anything, or 2121 if you can hear me, but the sound is breaking up. So please type 2121 or type question mark if you don't understand what is happening. We also would like to remind everyone to please make sure that your cameras are turned on. That will be proof of your attendance. For those of you who want to receive their certificates, please make sure that your cameras are turned on. Thank you so much for that. So later we'll have a 10-minute break. We'll be announcing that because something exciting will also happen even during our break time. Participants' microphones will be temporarily disabled by our administrator during the discussion to avoid interruptions. But for those of you who might have questions, during the Q&A portion, you can click the raise hand button and then we'll allow you to ask your question directly to our speaker. Or you can also type your questions here in the chat box. We'll be reading them. A certificate of attendance will be awarded to participants who will successfully complete the entire virtual masterclass. Again, make sure that your cameras are turned on all throughout the session. So they will be available 3 to 5 days after the e-learning session. Please help us build and improve our service with your comments and feedback. You can scan this QR code or click the link that we will be posting here in the chat box before we end our session. Fill out the form and then send it back to us. There you have it. Now I'm sure you're all eager to get to know our speaker. Let me introduce him. Our speaker today is a decorated HR practitioner with 25 years of HR experience, national, regional, and global leadership roles from different industry leaders such as DHL, Citi, Globe, IBM, Baker McKenzie, etc. He has strong expertise in business partnerships, talent management, organization development, and HR analytics. He is a certified MBTI and DDI facilitator and a certified strategic HR business partner. As an advocate of people analytics, engagement, and wellness, he has been a keynote speaker in many occasions in Asia and Europe. He is a pioneer in the shared services industry and was appointed the 2018 chair of the GICC HR Committee and the IBPAP Capability Building Committee. He is a recognized and awarded project manager and people leader. Among the awards he received are the Globe Excellence Award for Project Management, IBM HR Partnering for Project Diamond, PMAP's Exemplar Award for People Management, one of the Philippines' most talented HR leaders, and one of the 100 Global HR Heroes by the HR World Congress. He is also recognized as one of the 100 Filipinos to follow in LinkedIn. Our speaker earned his degree from the University of the Philippines as the year's top psychology graduate. He also has postgraduate education from Ateneo, La Salle, Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and Universidad Politécnica de Madrid. So everyone, let us welcome our speaker, Mr. Eric Riego de Dios. Good afternoon, Sir Eric.
Good afternoon, Kay. It's been a pleasure hearing whatever you said. It started daunting. I just thought that ako ba yung ini-introduce ni Kay? But
Happy to have you here again with Sir Eric.
with the HR and leadership community in the Philippines, I know that this is a CSR activity initiative for ARIVA, and I'm very happy to be participating in this initiative. I know that together we will build stronger HR discipline and HR community and leadership community for the Philippines. So I'm happy to be with you. Isang mapagpalang Biyernes para sa ating lahat. All right, Kate. So should we start our presentation, or would you have other initiatives or input before the actual topic or subject?
We're really eager to listen to you. So yes, we can start now.
All right. Thank you so much, Kate. So for every one of you, could you kindly check whether you're already viewing my presentation?
We can see it, but we can also see the click to add notes. That's part.
All right. Okay. So let me just swap the presentation format. How does that?
There. Now that's better.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kay. So every time, just please advise me whether we're doing well or there's anything that we need to adjust. So I am very happy to be with everyone, and today we will be talking about the workforce planning trends, and more specifically, the new approaches in strategic workforce planning. And because of the signs of the times, it is all about the post-pandemic setup, or the new world, so to speak. So having said that, I know that Kay has already introduced me a bit, but let me just provide a bit more context in terms of who am I, and just few bullets there there because what Kate shared with you is definitely a mouthful. But for this session alone, Kate mentioned that I have 25 years of experience, and hopefully I'll be able to provide a bit more input in terms of examples, in terms of context setting in our conversation. And of course, I've had roles in terms of manpower planning and recruitment, and of course, in organization development and strategic HR. So hopefully we'll be able to bring to life our conversation this afternoon. But having said that, and with the help of our technical staff as well, Kate, I would like to know our participants. I know that you have covered this a bit earlier, Kate, but I would like to also ask our participants to please actually try to go into Mentimeter. Are you seeing the Mentimeter there already? So just go to
Yes, we can see it.
and then there's a code there, and there will be a series of questions that you would need to answer. We'll be able to know exactly the exact participation this afternoon, where you're going. Okay, there's another one. Other HR function. The first to answer is someone outside of HR. That's a good sign. So there you go. More now. Other HR functions, non-HR. Okay, that's good. That's good. I know that we have a 400.
Is it okay? Is it okay if we just mention the code that just in case our participants are not familiar with the website?
All right. So the code, or the website is www.menti.com. Just go to that Google or URL and then type in the code 612-6069. That's 612-6069. Of course, we will not wait for all 420 participants to fill in or respond to the survey. I know that there are different platforms where we are, like YouTube or Facebook, and there's just Zoom here. So hopefully we'll get a bit more interaction here. So I want to know where you are coming from a role perspective. All right. So far, other HR functions aside from. So let's go back to the first survey. Let's just view that. Let's see. Okay, so for the first HR survey, it's interesting to know that, Kate, we have many non-HR practitioners joining our call. And that is very refreshing because definitely our topic is not specifically HR focused, but this is something that all leaders can learn from, especially nowadays that we need to really plan very strongly. Do you agree, Kate? Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, I would take that as a yes, Kate. For the next question, let's see. The next question is all about, there you go, your HR experience. So because many of you are saying that you're coming from non-HR practice, I'm not surprised that you have 0 to less than 1 year of HR experience. That's good. But for those with HR experience, you already have more than 5 years of experience. So quite a lot of experience, coming from this, going into this session. So thank you so much. And hopefully you could also provide input, context, and feedback, because let me just remind everyone that this is not just an Eric show. This is actually a sharing of potentially best practices and other input, so to speak. So having said that, let's go to the next question. So survey number 3, which industry are you coming from? And a vast majority is coming from others. So, and for those that are already in the industry that we have mentioned, we have banking and finance as the number 1, followed by manufacturing, and you have the BPO. So hopefully there is a good mix of industry participating in this session. Thank you so much. Last but not least, the last question in our survey. There you go. So location, Kate also mentioned that. So many of us are coming from NCR and then followed by Luzon. But there you go. You also have 2 so far from the overseas. So everyone is welcome. And this is also just to underscore, Kate, that regardless of where you are, this is a free and boundaryless world. Much like the new normal nowadays, it's not dictated by location or the periphery of your offices, but it is without any boundary. So thank you so much, technical staff. We can go now to our presentation again. So if I could share again, go. Let's see. All right, am I back, Kate? Just provide me an input there.
Yes, we can see it again.
Am I in the right display presentation mode?
It says here, getting to know our participants. That's what we're seeing.
Okay, that's just one big slide there. Thank you. So we got to know our participants, and many of us are not necessarily coming from the HR function. That is refreshing, as I've mentioned. And from an HR experience perspective, 0 to 1 year is the number one answer for us. So hopefully we'll be able to learn something new today. And from an industry perspective, many of us are coming from different industries and maybe from the academe, right, as well, because I did not mention that. But we also have banking and finance, we have manufacturing, and we have BPO. From a location perspective, we have NCR's number one and followed by Luzon, and we have as well, worthy of mentioning, a few coming from overseas, as mentioned by Kate earlier. All right, next slide is, so what are we talking about this afternoon? It's all about strategic workforce planning. So just a caveat, guys, essentially what we'll be talking about is a very broad topic that we cannot necessarily cover end to end in an hour or so. But having said that, I am giving a free invitation to everyone to engage with me after this session so that we could also tackle some of the particular nuances and idiosyncrasies of your organization, or whatever planning requirements that you might have, or questions that is actually triggered by our current conversation. So going back to our topic, today or this afternoon, we'll be talking about strategic workforce planning, and I'll be mentioning the acronym of this as SWP. SWP means strategic workforce planning, so don't be confused. So SWP is a process to systematically anticipate future business environmental designs on an organization and to meet the talent requirements dictated by these conditions. So we're talking about the post-pandemic, the new normal. Now more than ever, planning is very important, and planning frequently or reviewing frequently is very pivotal to our organizational success. And from a layman's term, strategic workforce planning, or SWP, is actually the wisest and most effective use of scarce or abundant talent for us. And it's connecting our HR strategy with the overall business strategy of the business, right? So making sure that we have the right talent in the right role, in the right time, and with the right cost or investment. Okay, so don't worry, we will be sharing all of these, or you can freely screen capture the materials so that you'll have a point of reference later on. So all of these definitions will come in handy in terms of focusing and operationalizing what we're talking about today. So having said that, let us move on. There are so many frameworks, there are so many paradigm that we can actually use when we talk about SWP. But suffice it to say, for our conversation this afternoon, let us just focus on the 4 major components of SWP. And just a caveat and a courtesy to the actual owner of some of the items or some of the elements in this presentation. We have lifted most of the content coming from LinkedIn resources, that's one, and also coming from the Academy of Innovation for Innovation for Human Resources. So don't be confused, because some of these are lifted from some other resources, and we will be tagging the rightful ownership of that from an IP or intellectual property perspective. So the first framework that we will be focusing on, and in terms of discussion, is the talent inventory. What is this? We will talk more about later on. The next one is, how do you forecast? What is talent inventory? And then once you have talent inventory, how do you forecast workforce from an internal perspective and also external perspective? Once you marry your talent inventory and your workforce forecasts, then you'll have to undergo some action planning. And once those action planning is in place, then you will have to put in place the governance model and evaluation to review whether you are tracking in the right direction or do you need to course correct. So just note this very simple model, this very simple framework, and this will be the heart of our conversation this afternoon. Okay. So why? What is the benefit and what is the rationale behind SWP? So whereas before, Kate and everyone, people actually rarely change jobs, 1980s and before, and some of you probably were not yet born during those times, but definitely we can see a lot of people staying in one company, having just one career. Hopefully this resonates with those who are, Gen X like me. And there are very rare cases of downsizing or redundancy. And job vacancies are actually easily predicted because people, as mentioned, they rarely resign. And then retirement, of course, is anticipated because in each country, there would be some mandatory retirement rules. Now, it's totally different. Uncertainty is the new normal. The pandemic has highlighted this, right? So everyone actually was caught off guard without any plans during this time. And it is all about the workforce readiness in a VUCA environment, right? So just to engage everyone, and maybe you can use the chat. So there will be 3 questions that I will be sprinkling in different segments of our conversation. So for my first question, and the first person to respond correctly to that question, either through chat or either through the different platforms that we have, will get a token coming from ARIVA. So we will just reach out to you if you are the first person who is able to answer this. And my first question is, what do you mean by the acronym VUCA? VUCA. So the first person will be able to type in the correct answer. So we have people coming from our ARIVA who will be monitoring who will be the first person to correctly answer this. Mind you, it has to be the correct spelling as well and correct sequence. Are we seeing some responses already coming from our chat box, Kate?
Yes, Sir Eric, we have a lot of answers actually.
Okay, so it means that they're listening. So don't worry, guys, whoever the winner is, we will be announcing them at the latter part of the session, or ARIVA Academy will be reaching out to you directly. So it is a token, so they will be sending us either in a form of Gcash or whatnot, but just suffice it to say, just watch out for our winners at the end of the session. All right, hopefully that gives you a bit of engagement and incentive for further listening as we go along. All right, so those are the rationale why we need to have SWP. Now, talking about the next survey, I want to understand first, and then going to our mentor meter again. So please, our staff, may I ask, how would you assess this statement? So go again to mentimeter.com, www.menti.com, and use this code 28980377. Again, www.menti.com and use the code 28980377. And the statement is, and how much you agree to this statement. Our organization is optimizing all possible types of sources of talent to be ready for whatever the future may hold. So are you pandemic proof? Are you future proof? So that's essentially our question from a workforce perspective. Wow, it's comforting to see that most of the people here, I guess beyond 50%, beyond the majority, are responding on the positive side. Wonderful, it's great to see. So majority of us would have some initiatives in terms of optimizing all possible types of sources of talent to be ready for whatever the future may hold. Wonderful. So we do have some responses as well in terms of strongly disagree, and hopefully those participants will be able to take away some information that would catalyze and galvanize their initiatives in terms of SWP. Thank you so much. And going back to our presentation. All right. So just to add on to the benefits and rationale of SWP, we need to prepare for the future, right? So that's essentially what's the end all and be all of the benefit of the core purpose of the SWP. We also have to identify workforce gaps. What are the gaps or issues and concerns as far as your workforce is concerned? And of course, if you do this very, very well, it could become a competitive advantage for your organization. So listen now, these are the key elements and assumptions of SWP. First and foremost is flexibility. Later on, when we integrate together, you will understand why it is important for us to have not just one scenario, but perhaps the top 3 or top 4 scenarios where you will really focus your initiatives and investments on. There needs to be flexibility when we do scenario planning given the uncertainty of the VUCA world. So we have to seek input from a variety of stakeholders and key players. How will the organization look like in 2 to 3 years or 5 years from now? We have to have a good understanding of that. Will we grow? Will we shrink? Will we specialize? Will we have other global footprints or geographic footprints? Or do we consolidate and close other shops? Those are some of the questions that are pertinent for us to be ready in laying down the foundation of our SWP. What kinds of knowledge, skills, and abilities will we need? For example, in IBM, essentially when I was there, it is already the world of cloud computing and cloud analytics. Gone are the days of the actual server type services that we provide. So from being a computer business, IBM actually transitioned into a consulting business, and a lot of service requirements and a lot of cloud computing competencies and skills that we needed to build. So that's one example of how do you have to understand where your organization is heading. Should you build, buy, or borrow? So what do we mean by this? By building, it means that we will be developing people. It is not just a matter of developing what is already there in your organization. It is also a matter of buying people or buying resources externally that are not yet ready, but you will accelerate their development plan and learning, just so they will be able to fit the requirements of your organization. So that is the definition of build. By buy, we also mean directly that these resources, professionals or skilled resources, will be plug and play, buying them from the market, putting them in your organization, and they are ready to produce the results that you require because they already have the skills, and that's what you actually buy from the market. And then you can also borrow. By borrowing, we mean that some people could get seconded from your subsidiaries to the headquarters or vice versa, so that new skills and new strategies will be built with that resources presence, and then that person would not necessarily have to stay there, but once everything is built, then the person could also transition out or go back to where that person came from, whether that is from an office perspective or from a functional perspective. And then we have to revisit every year or very quickly every quarter. So before we do this on a semi-annual, or the more regular ones is annually. But now, given the pandemic and the uncertainty of the overall landscape of the industry, we have to do this more frequently. Now, it would really depend in terms of how frequent it should be, because some industries and some businesses are more agile or more malikot, so to speak, so that you will really have to understand what would best work for your organization and how frequent reviews should be depending on your industry and your business. And then you have to focus on mission critical and pivotal roles. So let us first define, because we will be using these concepts more frequently as we move along in our conversation. So when we say mission critical, these are roles that would definitely break or make your business. So, case in point, in the airlines, a mission critical role will be your pilots. If you don't have a pilot, you won't have any business. Okay, so that is how we are defining mission critical roles. Now, moreover, as we extrapolate, pivotal roles may not necessarily be as critical as the mission critical roles, but they are the roles that are very important because they bring in revenue or sales, or they also differentiate you from the market. So, in the case of the airlines, we could probably say that pivotal roles are those that are, for example, in the cabin crew, because this is how people experience your organization, your customers, how they experience your organization, and they could also make some sort of a competitive advantage or a mark that would differentiate you from the other players in the business. So that is just an example, just to bring that to life and make that operational from our perspective. So we'll be talking about mission critical roles and pivotal roles as we move along. Next. So first and foremost, in terms of the steps, so remember when we had that framework, we said that SWP is all about creating the right inventory of talent, doing your forecasting, doing your action planning, and then having reviews and governance model or framework there surrounding the overall SWP system. This kind of process is very important across the first two items, the inventory of skills or talent, and also the forecasting. This is very important because given the transforming landscape that we have, these are just examples that if we don't transform, we will be left behind. So as you can see here with the introduction of the iTunes, for example, most of our recordings are now digital. So gone are the days where you have vinyl recording or cassette recording. As you know, where is Nokia now? It is actually overthrown by iPhone and Galaxy phone. And I don't know, maybe some of you are even asking, what is Nokia? And then you also have Kodak cameras before. And now you don't necessarily need to buy one because you have digital cameras and even digital cameras that are built in your phones. Having said that, this is just a major consequence of us not being able to transform and move along with the changing landscape of the business. The next, just to further operationalize environmental scanning, the first item there is environmental scanning network. This element is very important and in fact crucial because we would need to hear the different things coming along, the new things that are happening in the environment, in the industry, in the different companies, globally as well. And we have to get input from a trusted group of people. I know that we might be able to do this without putting a lot of formal framework, but making it formal and putting a real mold into it will be able to deliver more value to the organization. So when you create an environmental scanning network, please include various employees from different locations and different functions. So if you are a global organization, make sure that different regions, or more specifically, different countries where you get a lot of your revenue or presence are represented in that environmental scanning network. You also have to have representatives from different functions, whether that's HR, recruitment, legal, operations, products, development, and so on and so forth. We have to understand what is new in the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and even environmental areas. And then how will these impact the ways that you manage your people? How will these impact the long and short-term goals of the organization? So these are just some of the questions that you need to solidify and respond to when you create an environmental scanning network. So these are groups of people that are already, existing or incumbent employees in your organization that are engaged, that are very engaged with the organization and very much willing to participate just so your organization will succeed. Just to make sure that this environmental scanning network will succeed as well, we have to incentivize environmental scanning network. So we have to recognize the participants in that network. We have to reward the best ideas as well. And then we have to make them present to senior management so that there will be senior management buy-in. And then there will be some commitment coming from both the senior management and from your environmental scanning network. So now I am actually interested to know whether you are exercising or you have created an environmental scanning network. Do you already have this in your organization? And is this a formal and structured organization or team in your own company? So may I ask our technical staff to already show our survey form here? So may we know the Mentimeter here?
One moment. Okay, there it is.
Yeah. So please answer again. Go to Mentimeter. Maybe you can already flag your Mentimeter or save it, and then you just use different codes. The code for this time is code 19570681. 19570681. And the question is, my organization practices environmental scanning and has an existing network. Right? All right. So as mentioned earlier, and I'm seeing that we don't necessarily have this in a formal setup or framework. What I'm seeing is there are more or less loose framework where we go about our environmental scanning network practice or exercise, right? So more of us are actually practicing it in a less formal way. That's good to know. And maybe this is something that is worth looking into and worth looking into in a more structured and with greater framework and greater handrails, so to speak. All right. Thank you so much for your participation. So we are learning together here as we move along. Definitely something that we can revisit as well in our overall framework. Thank you so much for responding. We'll go now again to our session. Go. Moving back. So thank you for your input. The next slide. All right, so now we go to the first big framework here. It's all about talent inventory. Okay, what is talent inventory? Talent inventory is a database of skills, training, career interests, experience, and performance of the current workforce. So mind you, this does not exhaustively display all of the potential fields that you would need to have for you to build your talent inventory, because the next line actually is you can create your own talent inventory and provide more fields. More so, you can actually ask your employees to update their profile and provide specific input that they would like to include in their profile. Okay, and why is talent inventory important? And this is the first big step in our SWP. It is important because it is a way to identify several things as input to your SWP. It actually provides input in terms of who are the candidates that are due for promotion. So maybe they are already, so many years in the role, they are performing very well, and they are ready for the skills and capabilities required for the next level. but just so we just missed promoting them. So there are many occasions like this in my previous organizations where if we did not do this, if we didn't do this in a more formal way, this becomes an afterthought. And this actually translates into a lot of disengagement from our employees, especially those that are capable and they have already lots of years of experience under the organization. So let us all be mindful, and this actually is very helpful in terms of really engaging those that deserve a lot of focus on. And then we'll be able to also see whether there's a need for us to transfer. So when I was working in Globe, for example, there are new technologies that we need to deliver across the archipelago. And most of the concentrations, when we did the study, most of the concentrations are in Luzon. But because we want to strengthen our grip of the Visayan and the Mindanao markets as well, and strengthen our technology presence there as we build lots of networks and towers there, we needed to identify the existing talent, where they are now, and how do we transition and transfer them to the different geographic areas. And I'm sure some of you could also relate here, but we will not be able to do this without a formal analysis and study that goes with SWP. Now, compensation planning. We also need to understand, especially when we see that these people are tenured people and then they are actually capable in terms of performance. And when you look at their skill sets, they are ready for the next challenges in terms of where the company is heading, and yet they are not being compensated effectively and competitively. So one of the things that we actually did as well in terms of aligning them in the right direction, we did this in TOA Global recently, where most of our folks in auditing, bookkeeping, and accounting, we want to make sure that they are being compensated competitively in the market. And that's what we did in the last exercise. We saw their tenure, we saw their performance, and then we actually tried to put them competitively where they need to be. Some of them we needed at least go to the 50th percentile. Some of them we needed even to bump up at 75th percentile. So these are just the more purposeful and very instructive way of addressing that only through SWP can we see whether there are gaps or there are none. Of course, succession planning, and we'll talk more about that later. And then training, of course, we will see where the gaps, this is where we are. I was mentioned in IBM, where from a server environment to the services environment, where are the gaps and where would we need to focus on in terms of enabling and building that capability. Career planning, we will be talking more about that. Also the special assignments, because these are things that we could also engage our people, and this is one of the ways to engage them, especially the high performing ones. And of course, it's very important nowadays, diversity planning. We will not be able to see a view of this if we did not proactively look into the different geographic and demographic input coming from our people, whether from a gender, from an orientation perspective, from a physical capability perspective. We have to really focus on DE and I right now: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So these are just the output that we will get if we focus on creating our talent inventory in SWP. Now, my question is, do you have a talent inventory already existing in your organization? So now let's look into our Mentimeter again. Go to your Mentimeter, www.menti.com, and use the code 4166828. That's 4166828. So one brave soul said that no, we do not have a talent inventory. So maybe that's a question, a rhetorical question for us. Should you be having a talent inventory in your organization? But don't worry, you are not alone. Seemingly, there are also many organizations that do not have a talent inventory yet in their organization. So, and this is closely followed by, yes, they do have a talent inventory, but it is not complete and it is not updated. right? So that is usually our problem, because we might have a platform, but the platform is rarely updated and rarely made accessible to our people so that they could really update it in real time. So maybe again, that's a good takeaway for us. And we would like to congratulate so far the 14 organizations who are saying that yes, their talent inventory is complete and their talent inventory is updated, and it's even growing now. So thank you so much for your participation. Now we have a good view of the landscape, and so we are not alone, and maybe this is something that we could definitely improve on as an overall industry or as an overall HR community in the Philippines and beyond. So thank you so much for your input, very valuable input, because not just me but all of us now are aware where we stand in terms of talent inventory in the market. All right, good. So now after the talent inventory, the next wheel is the forecast. All right, so whether that's internal or external, we have to forecast the supply and demand. So from an external perspective, these are the sources of information where you could actually try to access. And some of them are posted on their respective website, but just mind you, they are not necessarily updated. So what I could share with you is you really have to extrapolate sometimes and do some math so that you'll be able to know the direction in terms of unemployment, in terms of number of resources that would be available. And just to name a few, of course, you will always have Dolly there, and you can have an access there in terms of, especially in their statistics and research office. You also have, talking about statistics, you also have your National Statistics Office. But again, some of these are not as updated as you would want it to be, so you would need a bit of extrapolation there. And then DOST, Department of Science and Technology. So this would give you a preview of what are the new products, what are the new technology that will be implemented in the Philippines, how will this, whether Philippines or beyond, and how will this impact your organization or your business if you are an entrepreneur. ITBPAP is also a good source of information in terms of who are the new locators, what are the new businesses that people are investing in from outside of the country to the Philippines. And more specifically under ITBPAP, PEZA. So PEZA or other economic zones could also provide you an input in terms of source of information, whether there will be closures, and then that would be a fresh input in terms of potentially resources that you can tap, or potentially, again, competitiveness, because there will be more locators in PESA that will be competing for engineering requirements or for accounting requirements and so on and so forth. That will be a good input for you. And of course, your DepEd or the CHED, Commission on Higher Education, because it will provide you an input on the fresh graduates from the universities. And usually this is the pool where we actually get most of our, fresh level or first level employees. So this is by no means exhaustive, but these are just examples where you can get your external information. But talking about external, let's now go into internal information. So when you looked into your data and for you to have a good forecast, take a look into the retirement rate. How many are forecasted to retire? How many are forecasted to attrite? Your turnover, historical data, this provides you great input and insight in terms of projecting and forecasting. Is there a new technology that you will be introducing? What kind of capability or skills that you will be requiring? Like, for example, because our business in SAP or success factors in IBM was very focused and in terms of growing, and we are engaging a lot of potential clients. So we had a big bank, we engaged a big bank, we had a cement manufacturing as well, we had a pharma as well. Because of this engagement, we knew that we had to build our SAP and success factor requirement. So that is a good input for you as well. Will there be mergers and acquisitions? Will your company be buying a new outfit? Will it be creating a new subsidiary? Or will you be divesting uh, a business unit from the overall headquarters? Are you introducing a new product? Is there a new market? So, for example, and this is a combination of new product and new market. So every one of us would be familiar with Amazon, for example, right? So Amazon is your online purchasing, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. But that was before. And then they acquired a certain market, a certain grocery, or a certain shopping area. Now they would have to build capability as well, not just from an e-commerce perspective, but an in-person transaction and sales. So that is something that they had to build. So another aspect is before they're only focused on North America, but when the time came when they had to, say that Amazon is now global and we will be distributing and sending products globally, think about how they tried to change their paradigm and how they tried to change their business model. So essentially needs new people manning Amazon in different parts of the globe. Where do you find this? Is the capability ready? And so on and so forth. Will you be closing shop, in some of your organizational units? So how will you do this? Can those be transferred, or do you have to redundate them? So these are the questions that you would have to ask. And after our conversation, after this session, I will be sharing, or via ARIVA Academy, we'll be sharing 2 sets of questions in terms of helping you, in terms of building your talent inventory. There are, a page full of questions that would help you, aid you, or guide you in terms of building your talent inventory. And there's another page that would help you in terms of forecasting. So hopefully those questions would guide you in the right direction, how particularly your organization will be treading in the path of SWP. Next, again, in terms of forecasting, this would be our steps, or this would be the main elements of forecasting. So first and foremost, we talk about pivotal jobs. You have to identify what are the pivotal jobs. So it's an 80-20 Pareto rule. You don't necessarily have to plan for all of your 100 roles in your organization. Maybe you just have to focus on your top 20 roles that are pivotal. And again, what is pivotal? Pivotal are those roles that are either mission critical, or they actually earn more revenue or sales or profit for your organization, or they differentiate you from the market. All right, and thus becomes your competitive advantage. Those are your pivotal roles because they impact, again, strategy, revenue, and differentiation. Next step is you have to analyze your human capital risk. What is a risk? Anything that would hold you from reaching your goal, or would be a roadblock, or would significantly and negatively impact your capability to achieve your goals. So these are your human risks. So absence of, fresh graduates from the university, or for example, when we transitioned into the K to 12, right? There is a certain gap, and we had to fill that gap. And some organizations needed to accelerate their building capability as opposed to buying capability. Last but not the least is your develop a forecast of demand. So more questions, as mentioned to you earlier. My guide questions 1-pager will help you determine your forecasting framework based on the questions being answered in those in that 1-pager. Right? I know there's a lot to take in, Kate. And Kate, just advise me whether there's a need for us to take a break as of this point.
We can go on break in 5 minutes. So we still have 5 minutes.
So this would be a slide, and after the slide, we can go on a break. Okay. All right. Thanks. I'll take your cue on that. So once we have everything in place, so you have your talent inventory, you also have your forecast in terms of supply and demand, you can now integrate them together. So it could result in either of the 2 scenarios, right? So based on 1 to 3 year planning, you would identify whether you have a deficit or there is no deficit, right? So all supplies are responded to and can be, all demands are responded to and can be provided. So when there is no deficit, there's not much to do, just your normal BAU. But if there is a deficit, there is a need for us to have a more concrete plan. So let us develop a plan, and whether you will buy, you will build, or you will borrow. So just to give you a bit more input and guidance in terms of buying and building, I have some sort of a chart here that would guide you in a way on what to focus on, what action to focus on. So, for example, if you do not believe that your forecast is accurate, then the more inaccurate it is, then the more that you would have to build it internally, right? So don't buy because it could be more expensive, and it could actually be there will actually be more risk because you are buying something that you might necessarily really need because your forecast is not very accurate. So the best thing there is just build it or develop it for the meantime, right? If it's all about, do you have enough qualified talent to develop others? What do you mean by that? Do you have enough coaches, mentors, managers that would allow the transfer and the building of the capability? Then if your answer there is yes, then you will have to build it rather than buy it. Okay. The next question is there a job ladder for progression? Do you have a career path? Do you have a career ladder? Do you have a trajectory? Is there already an existing career framework? If the answer there is yes, then build it rather than buying it. Right? So now the question is, will this be for a long term or a short term? Now, if it's short term and you really need it immediately, then you just have to buy it. But if it's for long-term strategy, you still have the luxury of time. It could be from 3 years from now or 5 years from now. Then it makes sense to really build it from the ground. Last but not the least, if you want to change the culture of the company, it actually makes sense that you just buy it, because some of the folks that are already there are actually perpetrators of the actual culture that you have. So it's best that you inject fresh blood into the new scheme of things, and then let them help change the environment by injecting new perspectives and new paradigms as well. Right? Makes sense. So with that, let us pause and take our coffee or tea, have your own afternoon tea, and then I'll see you very, very shortly, Kate.
Thank you so much, Sir Eric. Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. So now we're going on our break, as Sir Eric has mentioned. For those of you who'd like to grab something refreshing to drink, a cup of coffee, tea, or juice, you can do so. But we're also doing something exciting this afternoon, because right now ARIVA is in the mood to give away prizes to our participants. So we are going to play a game, and the game is called We'll show you what the game is called, and we are giving away prizes. I've mentioned, yes, the game is called Guess the Movie. This is how the game goes. We will be showing you short clips or short trailers of a particular movie, okay, of a certain movie. Now, what you have to do, nakita namin mabibilis kayong mag-type. So, dito magagamit natin yung skill na yan, because you have to be the first one to type the correct and complete title of that movie here in the chat box. Now, if you're the first one to get it right, you will receive 200 pesos. That will be sent direct to your GCash account. So, for you guys to get the feel of the game, gawa tayo ng sample run, okay? Trial run. No prize yet, but I want you to start guessing the title of this movie.
What do you say, kid?
Punch Daddy.
Oh, yeah. I spent 30 years trying to get away from the me that was you. And I'll tell you what.
There, wow, I am receiving a lot of answers in the chat box. Ang bibilis niyo mag-type. Let me just go back. Here are the answers that I got. You type in Adam, merong Deadpool. We have Adam Project, Project Adam. I also saw Adam's Project. Let's reveal. What's the title of that movie? It is The Adam Project. Okay, so I mentioned kanina, it should be complete and correct title. So, kailangan even the word the ando dun dapat. Okay, so if you get it right, you receive 200 pesos. Okay, so take note of that. Let's watch the next clip because this will give you 200 pesos.
Cletus, why me?
What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. I have tasted blood before, and that is not it. All I ever wanted in this world is carnage.
There you go. Wow, a lot of answers again here in the chat box. Very competitive ang ating mga participants. Here are the answers that I got. Some of you typed Joker. A lot of you typed Venom. Some of you typed Venom Carnage. Anything else? Joker, Venom, Lights Out, Venom Carnage. Okay, let's reveal. What is the title of that movie? And yes, it is Venom. So the first one who was able to type it very, very fast, we have Glyden Joy. Congratulations, Glyden. You are our first winner. So Glyden, this is what you have to do. Send your GCash account number to ARIVA Academy Philippines. Look for ARIVA Academy Philippines here in the chat box. Send your GCash account number privately, okay? And then wait for your prize. We'll be sending it in a little while. Now, Glyden, because you've won already, you won't be able to join the game anymore, okay? Para yung other co-participants mo will have a chance in getting the last 200 pesos that we're giving away. But you've won already, so congratulations, Glyden. Now, the rest of our participants, one more 200 pesos is at stake. Then Starbucks later. Okay, so let's watch the next clip.
Problems ourselves. Did you do something new?
I added peas.
Ah, peas. I love my wife, but there are times.
There's this huge space between us, and it just keeps filling up with everything that we don't say to each other.
What do you think she learned to shoot like that?
Looks like it's government or something.
You've just been identified by a competing agent.
Come on, sweetheart. Come to daddy.
Who's your daddy now?
There you go. So, the answers I got. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Well, actually, I think almost everyone, that is what you guys typed. Although I am seeing some typo errors, I think that's what happened. So do we have our second and last winner? And yes, it is Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Let me see. Who was the first one who was able to type this? From ARIVA, please, can you help me out? Medyo marami ang nag-type here. May naghahanap ng K-novela. Sorry, this is different. Direct Jeff, can you help me out? Who's our winner for this round? Ang haba sa chat box. Okay, so we have the winner is Therese Leia. Congratulations, Therese. We'll also receive 200 pesos from Arriva Academy. So please send your GCash account number also to Arriva Academy Philippines. Okay, that is where you will send it. Again, send it to us privately because we want to protect your data. Congratulations to our two winners, and thank you to everyone who participated in this game. Okay, now I'll move on with my other announcements. Stay on top of our insights and updates. Stay connected with Arriva Academy. Join Arriva Academy's Facebook group, like Arriva Academy's Facebook page. Follow us in LinkedIn and also visit our website, www.arriva.com.ph. I also would like to invite you to be a part of the growing Arriva Academy Viber community. So you can search for us in Viber or scan this QR code, and that will bring you inside the Viber community of Arriva Academy. For those of you who might have missed the past free live webinars that we've had since 2020, they are all in our YouTube channel. So subscribe to these channels, Arriva Academy and Arriva Talks. Now, here are some of our upcoming learning events. We'd like to invite you to be a part of these learning events also. Another free live webinar will happen next week. That is on November 8th. Actionable employee retention strategies for keeping your best talent. Again, this will be on November 8th already. On November 9, we have winning sales emails, how to write the perfect sales emails that get responses. On the same day, we have our project management essentials for non-project managers. Again, this will also happen on November 9. The 7S workshop, Reengineering the Basics of Good Housekeeping, on November 10. The 10th Essentials of Effective Logistics Operations and Warehouse Management on November 11. November 16, we have our Fundamentals of Cash Flow and Working Capital Management. Production Planning, Managing Inventory, and Stock Control Operations will be on November 17. Pricing and revenue strategies for better sales margin and business profits. This will be the topic on November 18. On November 22, strategic thinking, analysis, and business sales execution. Developing results-driven internal audit and controls on November 23. On November 24, the perfect pitch, public speaking, and presentation skills of breakthrough. On November 25, DOLE Department Order 174, updates on contractualization. And on November 25 as well, how to handle hazardous materials safely and prevent warehouse incidents. And for those of you who are interested in inviting our speakers to conduct a program exclusive for your company or for your team, Arriva can help you with your in-house training needs. We do virtual and face-to-face in-house programs. So here are some of the programs that we offer. Let us know what program you have in mind. Give us a call and we'll help you partner with the right speaker under Arriva Academy Speakers Bureau for that. For those of you who are asking if you can register for now, as early as now, yes, you can. Give us a call here at the office. Let us know what program you have in mind based on the upcoming learning events that I mentioned a while ago, or check out our website and register there directly. Okay, so I won't be taking much of your time anymore. We still have a lot to discuss. So let us again welcome our speaker, Sir Eric.
Thank you so much. And hopefully everyone was able to get your cup of coffee or grab some tea and so on and so forth. So let me just reshare my screen. And if I may, the technical staff, could you already flash our next survey? There you go. So just to recap, so this will be a good recap for us. So we talked about forecasting, so talent inventory and forecasting. Does my organization conduct internal and external forecast of supply and demand? So as you can see there, www.menti.com, and use code A3593966. That's A3593966. Okay. So, guys, this is just my observation. In all of the companies that I have been with, there is actually no robust process that I've been involved in. Maybe this is something that we will have to really mature as a practice, because your response actually tells me that, this is not just true from the companies that I've been with, but this is something that we should adopt moving forward as a best practice. Right? So, overwhelmingly, we have there are companies that do not have or do not conduct internal and external forecast. And then there are that, not even mature. So maybe you are doing it, in a way that is not structured or formal. But I'm happy for those who responded that, there are at least 5 organizations that are saying that they have a robust process in place. And this is very important, because given the signs of the times, you cannot predict the future, and you can only, prepare as much as you can by being able to forecast as much as you can as well. So again, this is something that we hopefully will be able to take away. And again, this is just the foundational stuff that we're talking about. I know that this is a more rigorous process to establish, but hopefully this is something that would interest you to look into further and also see whether this is applicable to your organization. Thank you so much. And let me share again my screen. Okay, so that is the survey that we actually talked about. So moving on to the next slide. So I would like to invite you to listen to this speaker. He's actually the main content provider of our discussion, coming from LinkedIn Learning, and his name is Wayne Cascio, Cascio. And he is a professor at the University of Colorado. So we'll be talking about the execution and evaluation of your strategic workforce planning system. So with the help of our ARIVA technical staff, you'll be seeing, a 4-minute video that will somehow synthesize things for us.
In the world of investments, would any reputable financial advisor suggest that you predict one scenario 10 years in the future and then build an investment portfolio based on that scenario? Certainly not. Any reasonable advisor would realize that the future is far too uncertain to predict. Instead, the advisor would have multiple future scenarios in mind and continuously update them as new data emerged. The advisor would then fluidly add and remove investments as the future developed. That kind of approach also makes sense when it comes to executing strategic workforce plans. In this video, I'll show you how to use scenario planning to think differently about strategic workforce planning. And I'll show you how to identify the kinds of questions you should ask when evaluating the usefulness of the SWP system that you have developed. Remember, the business environment isn't static. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's why it's important continuously to look 2, 3, even 5 years into the future to ask questions like, what will our organization look like in terms of the scale of its operations? What are the products or services we offer and the markets we operate in? What are the implications for talent? What are the number and kinds of skills we will need? What are the jobs where our talent has to be better than competitors? And should we make or buy that talent? As conditions change, so also should your strategic workforce plans. The objective is to ensure that your organization is properly hedged against multiple possible future scenarios and risks. In terms of evaluating SWP, both qualitative and quantitative objectives can play useful roles. In newly instituted SWP systems, for example, consider asking questions such as, are those responsible for SWP tuned into workforce issues and opportunities? Are their priorities sound? How strong are their working relationships with line managers who supply data and use SWP results? How closely do they work with these managers on a day-to-day basis? Do decision makers, from line managers who hire employees to top managers who develop business strategy, actually use workforce forecasts, action plans, and recommendations? In more established SWP systems, key comparisons might include actual staffing levels against forecast staffing requirements, actual levels of workforce performance against anticipated levels of performance, action programs implemented against those that were planned. Were there more or fewer, and why? Action program costs against budgets, and the relative return on investment, or ROI, of various action programs. Answers to these kinds of issues provide useful feedback to decision makers so they can improve the design and implementation of SWP going forward. Remember, we do not have an infinite supply of any resource, people, capital, information, or materials, so we plan in order to reduce the uncertainty of the future. And it's important not only that we anticipate the future, but also that we actively try to influence it. As management guru Peter Drucker once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Managing talent according to plan can be difficult, but it's a lot easier than trying to manage talent with no plan at all.
Yeah. Can you hear me well? Just give me a thumbs up sign. All right, perfect. Thank you. So you heard it from Wayne Cascio of the University of Colorado, and then maybe integrating everything together, we need to predict. Right now, it is very important not just to have one scenario, but a multiple set of scenarios where you will focus your attention and resources on, because there is just no one scenario that would prepare us for the future. And then you just incrementally adapt or adjust as you move along, because you will see anyway the signs of the times, how the landscape is changing, and then you focus on the scenario that makes sense during that time. All right, so hopefully that makes sense as well to you. So we are on the last leg. Actually, that is the whole gamut of our strategic workforce planning as a big framework. But I also know that it is very important for us to also understand a subcomponent of SWP. I would not be discussing this at length or in depth, because this is essentially a topic on its own, but let me just provide a few more context, because it is important to place this in the right perspective from an SW perspective overall umbrella. And that is called, of course, succession planning. So it is important. Succession planning is very important, because most of the time when we talk about succession planning, we focus on, in a Pareto principle, the 20 out of the 100 in an 80-20 ratio, right? We just focus on the key talent, and most of the time the key talent is comprised of leaders, and that is the main focus in terms of succession planning. It is very focal for workforce readiness. And because there's a need to be more dynamic, Succession planning moving forward is not an HR program. It should actually be an operations program that is more dynamic and also more relevant to the signs of the times. It is not necessarily HR's problem to supply or to supply to a certain demand of a leadership vacancy, but it's a joint effort between the leader of that unit and HR in terms of what would be the best approach to fill that gap, right? But between HR, and we will talk more about that, between HR and operations, I think right now, with the need to be more agile, more accountability is now being placed under operations or under the leadership responsibility or accountability. Last item is succession transparency. I know that this could be a great debate, perennial debate, because do we provide an input to the successors or the identified successors that they are identified to be succeeding, their boss and so on and so forth. There are yes and no's, and there are pros and cons. So let me just provide an example. They have conducted an overall industry-wide, actually more global, because this is not just North American centric. So it goes beyond. Most of the organizations that are headquartered in North America, they conducted a study, and of course, because of the global footprint of most of the American companies, this is more or less a global study already. So having said that, they said they have identified some of the leavers, top talent leavers in organization, and they asked why did they leave? And they said, I would have stayed actually if I were advised that I have a path or I have a future in the organization. So this works as well in terms of on the argument side of why we should provide and become more transparent in terms of our succession planning. However, there's another study that would counter that, because when we inform our people that they are, the identified successors and so on and so forth, if those did not materialize, then that is also a main cause for dissatisfaction, disengagement, and eventual resignation of those top talent. So again, there are pros and cons, and there is no one concrete direction or instruction in terms of what is the best approach. It would actually depend on how your culture is, and whether you are a transparent culture or not, and whether there is enough maturity with your management team and also your top talent team. So that's something that you probably have to discuss with your CEO or COO. But having said that, I think the best or the sweet spot would lie somewhere in between, not necessarily advising them or informing them that they are the identified successor, but also opening up opportunities for them to develop and to take care of them and assign coaches and mentors without necessarily telling them that they are next in line, but also enough that they would feel that they are valued, taken care of, and essentially the company is investing on them, and hopefully that will be a good sign for them to be fully engaged and also return that in kind. So with that, just a food for thought in terms of succession planning, which is a subset of SWP. Now, so having said that, and let's go into that debate. I would like to know from our participants whether in your succession planning, those that do have succession planning programs, are you actually transparent? Do you inform your people, or you do not inform your people? So go to mentimeter.com and then put their code 2323899111. That's 2389911. I hope we have more participants, or maybe you don't have succession planning fully in place just yet. But it would be good to know. For those that have succession planning, whether they are administering it or implementing it with greater transparency, or is it veiled under a secrecy, right? So I guess overwhelmingly, most of our organizations do not have that kind of maturity yet to be, very, very transparent. Although some are, as seen here with 16, but most of us, more than the majority of us, would actually prefer not to explicitly advise our key talent that they are identified as potential successors. Thank you so much for your participation. It gives us a good view of the landscape in terms of what is the culture in the industry right now. And given that this is a Philippine setting, I am not actually surprised of the results that we have. All right. So we are at the last leg, and hopefully we'll have, lots of time for conversations or questions. I'm just checking. It's 3:25 in my watch, and I am in the last leg of my conversation and really focusing now on some of the more important items as well, because we talked about succession planning. Let's go and broaden it and, talk about global talent, because it is important. Overall talent management is how the way we manage our talent. So as you can see there in our definition, global talent management is the attraction, selection, development, and retention of the highest performing employees in the most pivotal roles. Now, SWP is an exercise or a tool that is used by global talent management to ensure that we have a good path to tread in terms of executing our talent management plan. Right? So that is the relationship between SWP and global talent management. Now, in terms of, really leveraging talent, there are two ways looking at it: from a quality perspective and also from a quantity perspective. It's also important for us to understand this, because there are roles that impact the organization because of the quality of incumbent or quality of personality that we put into the role, right? So that is food for thought. What are these roles that when you put a real high caliber person would really impact the whole organization? On the other side, you also have an organization that would identify roles that with the right number, if you have more of those roles, then your organization would actually become more successful. So most of the time they go hand in hand. You need to have both quality and quantity of the roles, but sometimes in different phases of the organization at a given point in time, they would have to choose between focusing on quality of people with few roles, or the quantity of roles in the organization and filling them up, right? And then these are the three must for talent management. So again, it is all about identifying your pivotal roles. That's the first step. What are these critical pivotal roles? We talked about this before. Now, how do you develop a pool of high potential and high performing individuals? This is still under the global talent milieu. And last but not the least, how to create a development plan to ensure continued commitment for everyone. So this is the relationship between SWP and your global talent management. So why is it important? Because, as an input in SWP, you need to also predict and forecast your attrition and also your retention, right? So some of these are the retention initiatives that companies are actually implementing. So you have your bonus schemes and incentives. I'm sure you and some of your companies would have that as well. You also have engaging key talent by providing them the right coaching, the right mentoring, and the right development. That's more specifically for those key talent. And sometimes you also provide, significant increases in terms of their performance. So if we identify some critical talent, some of you would actually practice that of putting them at the very least at the 50th percentile, or more generously placing them at the average at the 70th percentile of the market in terms of compensation. So this is something that some of you might already be proactively doing. For some key talent, what would work is secondment. And secondment is essentially putting them in a different organization or in a different geographic milieu or different geographic footprint. And then secondment is essentially doing the same role, but in a different environment or a different group. Now, job rotation is different because you are plugging them up, blocking them out from their existing function and putting them into different functions so that they'll be able to know the different facets of the business, especially if you do have your apprenticeship or even your accelerated leadership program. And then sometimes those are not enough. You can probably also engage them to be leaders of certain projects, especially if these are high visibility projects, or these are also global in nature. These are some of the engagement initiatives that we have. And I'm interested actually to know in another survey, and I will ask the technical team, from your perspective, based on your experience so far, what has been the most effective retention initiative that your organization is actually implementing? So you have here again, mentimeter.com, 515-61266. That's 515-6161266. And I'm very excited to know among our participants, what is to them, you just unfortunately just have to choose one, what to you have been the most effective? I'm not asking whether you have that or not. I'm asking among those that you have, what is the most effective so far based on your observation, right? So far you believe that increases or putting them in the right salary structure, at the right salary level, at the right salary positioning, that is the most effective so far. And then this is followed by development initiatives, giving them coaching, mentoring, specific training, right? So that is coming in second so far. And then the third so far is giving them bonuses, maybe higher than your usual bonuses. Okay, so it's increasing. Other participants are other input, hopefully. And then, okay, incentive is increasing, giving more bonus. Increasing is, getting more traction there. All right, so training. Wow, so it's neck and neck between training and incentives, and project leadership is somehow at the fourth place. All right, so I think overwhelmingly what you believe, especially in the competitive monetized market, putting people at a very competitive position in terms of compensation has been the most effective intervention in terms of retaining your talent. That's good. That's a good input. And then this is followed by, of course, complemented by training, because it's not all about pay. There has to be a bit more of development as well. There has to be, you don't only grow from a financial perspective, you also grow more holistically. And of course, there is also bonus. But combined with increase and incentive, it is overwhelmingly how we, at least the participants in this program, are seeing to be the most effective way of engaging our key talent. It's definitely all about the money so far. All right, good input. Thank you for those of you who have responded to that. It's great input to actually see how we are in this overall changing landscape. So moving on. The question is, who now owns talent management? Who now owns succession planning? I have an earlier input regarding this, but let us hear it from the actual study coming from Pepsi-Cola company. And this is a global organization, as you know. Who owns talent management? So it depends, really. So if you're talking about high potential are those real high performing, high potential key talent that you have, and this is followed by the key contributors, meaning solid performing folks, but might not necessarily be high potential, and then folks that are in critical positions, but they're not necessarily high potential and high performers, right? So those are the things that we define these labels to be, and then we are segmenting it based on local, regional, and global. So as you can see there, everything that is global is actually, embraced and run from an enterprise perspective, right? There is just one accountable person, usually that sits with global talent management from an enterprise perspective. Now, if you have the regional view, now it becomes a bit more complicated because at PepsiCo, they have already devolved the responsibility and accountability in trying to have, global talent management and succession planning exercises really driven from the sectoral perspective, whether that is a business unit led perspective, or regional unit led perspective. However, for the high potential items, because these are named at a global basis, it is still held by the enterprise, okay, by the global account owner, which is usually global talent management. And then they just devolve everything. If it's everything about local, whether that's country or a specific business unit, then everything is given to local. So this gives them a bit of agility and input, so that business would run smoothly, and you give the right empowerment and accountability to where it actually sits, with greater immediate response to any issues and concerns. So this is just a framework that is used by PepsiCo, and you can actually also have your own depending on the nature of your business and how things are moving and the culture of your organization. Again, that would involve transparency, accountability, or how do they embrace talent management as a whole. All right, so another big item here, we talked a lot about the framework in terms of SWP, we talked about talent inventory, we talked about the framework in terms of forecasting, how you integrate them so you create the right action planning, and not putting all of your eggs in just one basket, but create different scenarios, perhaps a top 3, and then you adjust along the way. So those so far are the main takeaways that I wanted you to take. But given that this is under the context of the pandemic as well, these are different researches or input or feedback and insights coming from different platforms, academies, and learning institutions, and these are a summary of everything that they unanimously or together say that these are the actual impact of pandemic and how it is impacting SWP. So the first there is, of course, as we are all very familiar with, location of talent is no longer fixed, but it is actually, there is greater bias for mobility. So what does this mean? It means that, from an office space perspective, there might be a new redesigning of the office space, because not everyone might actually be needed in the office, or not everyone might not be comfortable going back to the office. So it's now the current debate whether, what is the right or what is the sweet spot between, and how do you define actually a hybrid working model. That is something, again, that would have to be defined internally, because you have different business milieu and the nature of your business and the nature of your leadership culture as well. But you also have to invest now in terms of mobility tools. It's not just the provision of phone or laptops, but also provision in terms of insurances, in terms of the setup in the workspace in their private homes or residences. The next one is the flexibility in terms of space and time, right? As of course implied in the first bullet. Now there is greater openness in terms of getting opportunity, casting a wider net and engaging talent, not just in certain areas, because you can get any talent as long as that talent is willing to actually work in a certain time zone or time frame. Also, potential work from the US might not necessarily be confined in the North American territory. And this is good as well because it amplifies diversity. Now, people from Asia, Europe, or Africa can actually apply to a North American opportunity, and so on and so forth. So again, depending on the disposition of that talent in agreeing to the terms and conditions of work. But again, there is, again, a wider net, a bigger net. And then there is a greater opportunity for the right talent at the right cost. So this is a great opportunity because, more competent or more capable talent could actually be more competitively priced and not your usual European cost or North American cost. The next big takeaway to the different feedback and insights and researches, there is focus now on not on roles, but really more on skills. So perhaps when we do our SWP, there is actually less focus on succession planning when it comes to roles, but really more on skills gap. So that we have to fill those skills gap. So a lot of emphasis on core skills, and especially from a leadership perspective. Now, of course, there is a need for technical capability and skills, right? But right now, it becomes more important for leaders to be very agile in terms of learning, because we don't know what's happening, what is next. Will there be a new pandemic, or what kind of disruption will happen globally? So leaders should be very fast in terms of adapting and pivoting. All right. So we talked about adaptability and resilience. So now when we talk about that, we have to also, when we do succession planning, readiness would also have to be assessed in terms of readiness of the leaders, in terms of having these developed competencies and skills. Are they more empathetic? Are they more agile already? Are they able to display greater resilience? So those are the things that we will be looking for, that before might not necessarily be the ones that we look into. And we focus largely on your overall leadership skills and overall technical skills. So these are very, very important and really put at the front of all of our assessments. And of course, there's greater inclusion and viability of the gig economy. So we talked about, if it's just a short term, go towards the gig economy or towards the project-based engagement. And if it's just to fill for a certain point in time, then you have your freelance and your gig economy folks present there. And this is again without boundaries in terms of geography and time zone. So let's make use of this, and this should always be part of your overall SWP because of the growing gig economy resources that we will have. And then just to emphasize again, there has to be greater frequency in terms of reviewing it. You might be reviewing it before on a yearly basis. But now you have to change that, because you really have to make sure that you are that the research results, the insights, the feedback are relevant and on demand. So it has to be more frequent than before. And if you can do it on a quarterly basis, just a very short review, I guess that will be very helpful for us. And there's a need for a speed of developing people, because redeployment is again very fast. Whereas before you have the luxury of time, now we have to speed up and accelerate things. And then, as mentioned earlier, there is an urgent retooling of the leaders. There's again a need for empathy. There's a need for trust to engage talent better, because it's a different way of engaging people in a virtual setup versus a face-to-face or an in-person setup. Right? So that's something that you should be thinking more about. And then stronger bias for buying talent now, especially for the short term, as I have mentioned. So again, the gig economy and leveraging as well the short-term engagement of even freelancers. Last but not the least, we have to review on what will reward the talent more. So you mentioned, and some of those of you who have responded, that essentially engaging your talent is largely based on increases. That's the overwhelming number one. And then you also have bonuses as number two. And then together, they are the vast majority of the responses. But maybe beyond that, engagement will now have to evolve so that it would cover the other needs of the people. So remember, when there was a pandemic, when the pandemic is at its height, people are not necessarily mindful of the bonuses they're getting or increases. So they're more mindful of, will my HMO take care of this? Is mental wellness part of the overall package? So these are the things that we have to look into so that we have a more holistic and more wide-ranging approach in terms of how do we satisfy the needs of our people, and most especially the key ones at that. Right? So, lots of questions for us to prepare so that we'll have a very robust SWP or strategic workforce planning. I do have one question for you before I wrap things up. And again, courtesy of ARIVA Academy, So again, use the chat box to respond. So this is my second question. Who said that the best way, again, be ready, the best way to predict the future is to create it? Okay, who said that quote? So that was mentioned earlier. There you go. It has to be correct spelling as well. I know that there's a lot of chat happening there. Thank you so much. So Kate would be identifying who the winner is, and Kate will also be asking you to probably, or will be reaching out to you so that we'll get to know either your Gcash or a way to reach out to you. So thank you for participating. And of course, the answer is Peter Drucker. All right, so this would be my last slide if I am, if I am honest with you. So just to wrap things up, and we are now at 3:45 p.m. and we probably have a few minutes for questions. The three main purposes of SWP is to, again, anticipate and respond to the talent needs, our talent needs, the organizational talent needs. Second is we have to determine what priorities for hiring and development are needed based on the assessment of your talent needs. And then you have to allocate resources for that. And then these are the important components of SWP that you have to take away with you. Again, talent inventory, you have to create that internally, workforce forecast, and do that internally and externally as well, and then marry it together with talent inventory. You will have and you will see your gaps there, and that will force you to create action plans. And again, action plans should not just be one plan. It has to be, a scenario of about 3 so that you get traction as you go along and invest more on the scenarios that are likely to happen in 2 years, 3 years, or even 5 years. And then it is very important to monitor and evaluate your plans. And maybe this is a plugging, this is another opportunity because it is very important for us to be very comfortable with people analytics. People analytics will provide you the right insight and input, whether you're tracking well in terms of your SWP or strategic workforce planning. They go hand in hand. So SWP, or global talent management, is the client of people analytics, so that there will be feedback, input, and insight for actionable business information. And that's what I have. That's all I have for this afternoon. Thank you for patiently listening. I know that there's a lot of cerebral demand for this, and I'm very happy to be having this conversation with you. I know there's a lot to take away, a lot to digest, and that's why I'm offering an open invitation to have an engagement, a chat on LinkedIn or wherever, so that we can continue the conversation, and maybe I could potentially address some of the issues and concerns as well that are particular or organic in your business. So back to you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eric. Okay, so now we have enough time to address some questions. Here's a question that was sent to me directly here in the chat box. For those of you who would like to ask questions, you can click the raise hand button or type your question here in the chat box. If you want to remain anonymous, send it directly to me so that I can read it without reading your name. So here's the first one. Is buying talent similar to hiring talent from external?
Yes. So buying talent is actually hiring talent externally. So it doesn't mean that because there's another version, as mentioned earlier, I said, when you build, it does not mean that you just confine yourself in building the capability from the talent that you currently have. It could also entail you buying talent that you would build immediately, or you will develop immediately. But the question there is, there should be enough time to develop them, and that project requires gives you the luxury of time to develop people that you'll be plucking externally. Now, to answer directly your question, buying talent is when the talent externally is ready and fully capable of delivering what needs to be delivered. That is the time that you really buy talent. That's the time that is the actual definition of buying talent. So when you buy a talent, when you hire a talent that is not yet ready for delivering what needs to be delivered, it is not buying. It is just hiring. And then there's a need for you to build them and develop them, as opposed to buying them with the right skill sets and the right competencies. And that's the only time that you would really say that technically this is buying talent. I hope I answered that first question, Kate.
Yes, so thank you for that. Here's another question. How to ensure quality, quantity, effective and efficient employee output when it comes to flexible work arrangements?
Right. So again, this is an ongoing debate, right, Kate? And I don't think I have the monopoly of truth when it comes to that. But let me just provide some insights coming from my perspective. And based on my experience as well. Everything is actually delivered by and influenced by your company culture. Some organizations, because of the transparency and the trust that they have in their organization, they are very comfortable in operating in a virtual setup. So when I was working in City, I was in real partnership with my boss who is based out of New York, and then our total rewards person is based out of Tampa, Florida. And my boss in New York and my counterpart in total rewards, they haven't met face to face yet, and yet they're interacting for years and years. So again, it depends on the actual setup. It depends actually on how you measure and what's the cadence of governance as well, and what is the commitment of each other. So there are so many layers that would have to be discovered there, Kate. And I guess there is no one size that fits all. And it's something that we would have to look into on how do we measure what is the governance, what is the norm, and what is the end in mind in terms of the culture that we're creating.
Thank you for that. Another question that was sent to us. Okay, this one's interesting. How can we effectively and efficiently delegate our workforce despite the traumatic experience we had during the pandemic?
How do we effectively, can you repeat that? How do we effectively
and efficiently delegate our workforce despite the traumatic experience we had during the pandemic?
It is traumatic, and we are not expected to be optimally operating 100% every time, all the time. So no one actually predicted the pandemic to be happening, and it might not, knocking on wood, it might not necessarily be the last that we will encounter. It might come in a form of a war, for example, or a political uprising. No one can really be prepared, and no one could actually force us to be always 100% effective and efficient. There would always have to be some, peaks and valleys that we will allow only because of the, changing milieu of the environment. But what is important is, again, going back to our SWP, do you have scenarios that somehow would cushion the impact of that? Right? So did you build enough margins and initiatives that would cushion the impact of a potential new pandemic, potential new uprising, political unrest, or war, for example? So it is really up to us to really put the right hedges so that we'll be more prepared than never. So having said that, it's always good to have a plan, whether that scenario would pan out or not. At least you have something, so that if ever that would be, if a situation that is even remotely similar to that, you are somehow cushioned and protected in a certain degree.
Thank you for that. Here, another question. This one's for Eric. Where is one more? What are the best lessons and best practices that you've had pre-pandemic that you brought with you in this post-COVID world?
Yeah, so it's great because the word VUCA was actually a real buzzword even before 2 years even before the pandemic happened. And when we're talking about VUCA, we have to be ready with uncertainty, volatility, complex setup, and even ambiguous. You don't know whether to do one over the other. It seems to be that so you have to be very comfortable in being uncomfortable. And my past experiences, in IBM, for example, where we are very comfortable in a VUCA environment. And it's true what Peter Drucker said. So for us to create our own businesses, you really have to create the need for it. And for you to predict the future, you really have to create it, right? So that's create it, or at the very least influence it.
Thank you for that. Another question. Okay, in retaining talent, I choose incentives because I think this is not a question. Okay, this is a sharing. In retaining talent, I choose incentives because I value the in-house hospitalization plan of this institution for me and my dependents rather than the salary increases. Oh, that's a
Yeah,
sharing
thank
from one of our participants.
Thanks, Kate, for that, because it underscores our discussion earlier that our way of rewarding should not be confined on incentives and bonuses because the needs are changing. Right now, I would definitely give up, half of my salary just to make sure that my family is protected, right? It really depends. During the height of the pandemic, your main concern is, will we live? Or is my family safe? Is my mental health okay, my wife, my children? So again, it depends, and that's why we have to be also flexible in terms of how we engage and retain our talent, by also discovering what are the reward schemes that would be relevant for them in their journey of employment.
Okay, and I think this is a last question that we have. Since we have a lot of students, what would you advise future HR managers?
So if you're a student, when I was a student in psychology, we didn't have ARIVA yet. Maybe because a long time ago, right? Okay, so that reveals a bit of my age. So again, participate in these kinds of webinars. Always connect. Always, ask for a mentor or a coach, because these would accelerate your development. Learning from from school, where it's guided by, with all due respect, it's guided by a certain curriculum, but it needs a lot of variety, because variety is the spice of life. And the variety of learning that you get from webinars, from mentoring, from coaching, joining associations, it brings to life a different scenario that you would not necessarily get from books. So what I would advise you, that if you want to get an early several steps ahead, get a mentor, participate, be social. I know it's already part of your organic characteristics, being in Gen Z and new millennials. But yeah, just leverage that kind of curiosity, wanting to learn more from those that went ahead of you. I think that would really create a big impact. And I would have wished that I had a mentor even before, when I was just studying in the university. It would have created a lot of impact and change for me, Jade.
Thank you so much, Sir Eric. Because of that, we'd like to present you with this certificate. Let me read this. ARIVA Academy Learning Development at its finest gratefully presents a certificate of appreciation to Eric Riego de Dios for generously sharing his professional expertise, invaluable knowledge, and wisdom to the delegates of strategic workforce planning for competitive advantage in a post-COVID world. Held on November 4th, 2022 via Zoom platform and signed by Chairman and Chief Strategist Learning Event Producer J.M. Atienzo and President and Chief Learning and Development Strategist Michelle Irish Malondo Samson. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our speaker, Sir Eric. Maraming salamat po, Sir Eric.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a privilege to be helping, in a way, influence and uplift the HR practice and the leadership practice within our community, within the Philippines and beyond. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you from all of us from Arriva. Thank you so much for saying yes to our invitation and looking forward to working with you again in the near future. Sana po magkaroon na ng face-to-face event with you, Sir Eric.
Although the energy is different when you are in the virtual and the face to face. I'm a face to face kind of person, so I look forward to seeing you face to face and meeting in person as well.
Yes, looking forward to that. Thank you, Sir Eric. And now, for all of our participants, let's invite everyone. For those of you whose cameras are still turned off, Sir Eric, please don't turn off your camera. Let's do a group photo with all of our participants. There you go. And we will be assisted by our technical director, Jeff.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss Kate. Okay, guys, please open your camera before we start for the group picture. Okay, come on, guys, please open your camera. Let's wait for the others. Okay. I think we're good. So, guys, show me your beautiful smiles. Get ready. And 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, one more. This time, let's do a thumbs up naman, guys. Thumbs up. Okay. Get ready. In my count. And 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Miss Kate.
Thank you so much, Jeff. In behalf of everyone from ARIVA Academy, I'd like to say thank you to all of our participants, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and the whole world. Thank you so much for being with us on this beautiful, fantastic Friday afternoon. We're looking forward to welcoming you again. And for those of you who are interested in joining our other learning events, check out our website, www.ariva.com.ph. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you.